Lately, I'm taking my sketchbook with me wherever I go. Most of the time, the sketches are very simple and a bit random. The interior of a cafe, a portrait sketched on a bus, or quick landscapes as I try to avoid the cold. I don't have a goal for these beyond the journey itself, beyond getting back into the habit of just drawing for the fun of it. I visited a small cafe here on Jeju with an interior design that just begged to be sketched. Sadly, the cat that greeted me at the entrance wasn't visible from our table, or I'd have sketched her for sure. This sketchbook here is an older one, and you can see that I'm going back through it, filling the backs of pages. So the paper quality is at this point not the best. I've talked to some other artists here in Korea, and the humid rainy season each summer can really get to watercolor paper that isn't stored safely. I can feel how it doesn't absorb water and paint as it did in the past, and painting on the back of these pages probably doesn't help. But it does help with ignoring my usual perfectionism and just drawing what I see. The same sketchbook traveled along on a short hike. The first hints of spring are now here on Jeju, but the wind is still freezing, and so my first sketch that day happened on this tiny scrap of paper instead. When travel sketching, I found some tools incredibly important. Beyond a sketchbook with a sturdy cover that I can balance anywhere, and my tiny watercolor palettes, a water tank brush is what I use all the time. Even when I carry a small jar of water with me, usually wind, uneven ground, or time constraints bring me back to the water brush instead. Also, paper clips in various shapes and sizes are great to have, or else my pages would constantly be fluttering all over. How is outdoor sketching going where you live? Do you also have pretty intense weather to keep in mind when you try to do this? Jeju, being an island, is rarely not windy, so I've really had to adapt to that. Little sketches like these are purely for fun, to capture memories or to experiment. I don't have a goal or practice anything in particular with them. But one day, after I'd wrapped up a couple illustrations and got ready to start a new painting or two, I went back to my actual practice sketchbook for a more focused approach. It's always after finishing challenging paintings that Pandora or Silmarillion illustration from January and February come to mind. that I feel an urge to go over basic art skills again. The challenging projects show me where I struggle most, put a magnifying glass over my weaknesses, and I can then re-evaluate and practice what I need most. At the moment, it is portraits, but focused on the planes of a face, the three-dimensionality of it all. I often found myself repainting faces of characters in those illustrations I'd mentioned, often needing multiple paint layers before the expression and personality looked right. So I'm going back to basics to build a more stable foundation, I hope. While I've mentioned the Loomis method in the past during other sketchbook sessions, here I'm going over the Asaro head. It had caught my eye recently, something about the overall look of it is appealing to me. The angular, exaggerated shapes, the emphasis on cheekbones and the nose. I'd gone over the nose separately before, but lately I'm trying to bring it all together with some studies of 3D models. I'd love to get the actual real-life bust of an Asaro head for practice, but they are pretty expensive. I found that the Loomis portrait method, even the simplified, adapted way I use, is great for sketching, for quickly capturing proportions and build a portrait from scratch. But when painting, I struggle finding those plane changes on a face, where to place shadows, midtones, highlights with logic and consistency. I think the Asaro head model might be better for practicing those. Let me know if you'd like to see a sketchbook practice session all about the basics of portraits. I definitely want to sit down one weekend or another to really dig into how I can approach portraits better. Maybe do some skull studies to get a more complete sense of the structures. I think that might even make for a good two-part video mini-series. One focusing on just pencils and capturing these basic shapes, and then another one in which color, maybe watercolors, come into it. I think sketching portraits from reference is my comfort zone, and I love doing these movie studies as practice too. At the end of February, I collected my set of small prints to send out to Patreon members. If you've signed up for the new snail mail membership, your letter might still be traveling around the globe, depends on how long it took me to edit and post this video, though I did test snail mail to a couple friends in both the US and Europe, and everything seemed to arrive pretty quickly. These 7 prints are small love letters to both movies and the art of portrait sketches itself. I think they make a pretty cute set. Could be used for personal notes or as bookmarks even. And I wrote thank you letters as well to celebrate my very first month of Patreon prints. Now I'm preparing both the new small prints for March's snail mail and the larger ones that I'll be sending out to the airmail membership. It feels really wonderful to have started these membership options, and I'm excited to print more small sketches, the occasional sticker, postcards, and lately even bookmarks as we go along. Now let's travel back in time just a week or so, as this art vlog editing is a bit all over the place. These ocean and galaxy themed sketches pop up in previous art vlogs, and here I created more sketches focusing on teal and purple colors, trying to capture a particular idea for a mermaid painting. This small painting would be a contribution to an online exhibit titled Ocean Tales by Inverarity Gallery. I wanted my painting to be small, delicate, and focused on layering acrylic glazes for a transparent, underwater feel. But when working with transparent glazes, I really have to figure out the color palette ahead of time, as things can get muddy if I course correct along the way. I really like this small sketch here, playing with complementary colors and using mostly shades I usually don't paint with, breaking out of my comfort zone palette of ultramarine blue and earth tones. I had this small cradled panel for a while, waiting for a painting that fits the format. I love painting on these panels as the wooden cradled frame really elevates any painting while staying sleek and simple. But to be honest, I prefer sketching on paper, as gesso panels and their very smooth surfaces can be a bit unforgiving, feel stiff and harsh under my pencil. I kept my sketch very simple, trying to just capture the proportions of her face at this upturned angle. This kind of brings us full circle to my urge to practice portraits with a focus on structures, with those Asaro head sketches I'd talked about. Especially for more challenging head poses, a clearer understanding of those key shapes would probably really help me in my painting process. To protect the wooden frame of the panel, I safely taped those with artist masking tape and then sealed my rough pencil drawing with acrylic gloss medium. That doesn't smudge the pencil lines at all, but preserves them under a thin, transparent layer. Like I said, I want to work with transparent glazing layers to evoke that feeling of being underwater, everything a bit blurry and as if in constant movement. This is why I really love acrylics. I can use different mediums to change paint properties to suit what I want for each project. Here that meant glazing fluid for the early, most liquid color layers, and later I switched to soft gel gloss to make the paint transparent, but still hold a brush stroke. The great thing about painting with transparent glazes is that it goes incredibly fast. I switched between bristle brushes to give texture and soft rounds to hold more medium, and ignored my pencil sketch to just give the whole panel an underpainting. The colors here were pretty scary, to be honest. I mentioned that these are out of my comfort zone. I usually rely heavily on warm and cold contrast for my color palette. Plan my paintings around those because, well, I like the aesthetic. I like blue and muted reds. But I do want to make sure that it doesn't become a crutch. I want to challenge myself, both with this painting and a few others I've been working on, to actually give a full color palette or unusual pigments a try and see where those lead me. Maybe I'll then go back to lots of cobalt blue and ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, but it wouldn't be just out of habit, but as a conscious decision. I'd bought a tube of Viridian Green, specifically for this painting, but also with future ones in mind, and because it's honestly kind of weird that I don't already have that shade in my collection. It's wonderful to mix with alizarin crimson or quinacridone magenta and red, and while I'm still learning more about color mixing, I've really enjoyed my new experiments a lot. I had to put away the painting for a while as I needed to focus on other illustrations for clients and some other work, and it was after finishing those that I suddenly had the urge to spring clean and rearrange my entire desk area. The days are getting warmer. I finally get ambient sunlight at my desk each morning as the angle of the sunrise changes, and it just feels good to reset after having tunnel vision on paintings for a while. You might have seen this little silicone grip around my desk or in painting videos on occasion. It's like a little grip to hold hot pans, frying pans, that kind of stuff. But what I use it for is to open acrylic paint tubes that have become a bit gunky. Gives me just like enough of resistance and a good grip to open them. I now have this area to clean as well, and I'm thinking about putting some kind of potted plant in the background somewhere now that spring is back and my plants can return to my desk. I moved around some of my art prints. One is by Violet Portrayal, Heidi, over on Instagram. I've linked her in the description. There's a floral print from Coffee Scribble, a historic map of Jeju Island, and then some old watercolor planets that I painted. A while ago I bought a few art prints on InPrint. I got a few like Dragon Age prints, mini portrait prints, because I like looking at the brushwork up close. This one is by Ryan Pancoast. I love his work. He does these incredibly soft fantasy art pieces. I really have to apologize to my cat because this is his cat tree and at the moment it's just a storage space for me. I can only do this in winter when he actually dislikes being here again because it's a bit cold, but starting spring he will be sitting up there judging my art again. We recently actually had some minor water damage, which got to some of my stored paper and packaging supplies, of all things. So to be honest, my desk area is even more of a mess than usual. But yeah, you can see that my desk is pretty much a workspace. I had a lot of client stuff to finish over the last month, and I ended up filming most of my video content either outside or at cafes, or at a different table in our house, like just a tiny table where I can film with good daylight. Here we go. I'm not sure how well it shows up on camera, but I added a coat of paint. Moving things around on my desk to be more ergonomic, to make filming easier with the camera setup that I have, and to make this an overall more welcoming space. My studio really is just a desk and a couple shelves in one corner, and it often descends into a very unaesthetic, not YouTube-friendly workspace. Making it look nicer is really just for my mental health. A potted plant or two, pretty lamps or candles, some prints as decor. I spend so many hours here each day, I might as well make it a positive environment, while still being a workspace and efficient. I usually listen to audiobooks while painting. Do you have any book recommendations? I'm actually on 3 book series at once at the moment, which isn't something I usually do, but it's been great for this painting process. If I need to focus on the painting more, I sometimes miss entire passages or dialogue, so it's better to listen to something I've read before, even if it's a long time ago. My current comfort reread is The Fellowship of the Ring, read by Andy Serkis. I've also started reading The Gardens of the Moon. The Malazan books have been on my to-read list for an eternity, but especially for the first book, I need to focus quite a bit to catch all the names and locations, so it's not the ideal painting companion. Most recently, I absolutely blew through The Mask of Mirrors, a less dense but still quite intricate and fascinating fantasy story full of political intrigue, with a cast of characters and themes that I just really connected with. Audiobooks can be useful to keep track of time while painting, for me too. I try to use the chapter breaks as reminders to maybe stretch my hands, get a cup of tea and rest my eyes for a while. If I just listen to music or don't set myself reminders, my posture just gets worse and I never take a break. It's also helpful to take a few steps back and look at your painting from a different angle, from across the room, and see what jumps out at you from there. What do you listen to, if anything at all? I'm very much a person that needs background noise, but maybe you work in silence, with just music? Personally, beyond giving me structure, I also just love reading and love painting, so this is a way of making time for both. I kept on slowly layering my transparent acrylics, and only the very center of the mermaid and the sparkling stars themselves are getting completely opaque paint. This creates a sense of depth, of the water making anything just a little further away look blurry. Not all of my paintings have a message. I love book illustrations, so sometimes it's just an interpretation of a scene, a certain emotion I want to evoke. But for this one, the message actually came first. I have a deep dislike for sayings like, the grass is greener on the other side, and similar ones. The idea that any urge to improve or reach for something new and maybe better means that you're discontent with where you are. I think one can be both happy and appreciate the current state, while still longing for new, different, enriching experiences and striving to improve. So here the mermaid sees the night sky for the first time. She gazes up in awe and with a sense of longing, but she isn't in despair. Her ocean world already has stars of its own, which in my mind could be anything from magical lights to bioluminescent marine microorganisms. It's a beautiful place full of wonders that she embraces, while also appreciating that distant world and seeing the beauty in it. I'm not sure if I articulated that right, but maybe the feeling comes across in the painting itself. To harmonize with all those glossy paint layers, I used the satin gloss varnish to finish. The multiple layers really build up that glass-like surface, and I love how this one turned out. This small original is now available on the In Verarity Gallery website. If you enjoy mermaids, ocean imagery of any kind, and the color blue, I'm sure the Ocean Tales exhibit has something that you would like. After wrapping up this painting, I've been diving into some other work with an inviting desk space, more daylight hours to paint, and that urge to practice basics and sketch as much as I can. I'm excited for what spring brings. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in my next art vlog.